Soft, that might be a good idea. Dang. Right.
Thank you all for coming here. I was going to do a speaker and everybody here, okay? I'm going to be loud, So, why are we here, right? We have people on the ballot for the election, 2 mayoral candidates, and 3 council candidates that are going to be on your ballot for New Franklin. 2 of them cannot attend tonight. They had prior engagements. One had prior engagement, and another person had a something come up. So I'm going to read something from one of them when we do introductions, and then we will do a. I have a video I can play from Mr. Daniels. I'll just do the audio so you don't have to see it. So first, I've asked Paul Adamson, our mayor, to lead us in prayer before we get started. If you would have.
Sure. You may see it. And it's an honor. And I will say it's a blessing that we're here together, because every time we have an event here at the Tudor House, this is how we begin. If you've attended them, you know that. So we just ask the good Lord to be with us today, to join us this evening, to help you folks decide what's best for our city. People under this tent care, and that's why you're here. Lord, we ask you to continue to bless these people, bless these candidates, bless our city. And I must also ask you to keep in your prayers and bless the families of Tim Stephenhagen and Nina Parnell, who just passed away within the last 30 days or so. Long-term residents. So maybe before we conclude, maybe we take a moment of silence for them and for all of your loved ones, anyone who's lost loved ones that are with us here at this tent. May they all rest in peace, and may you guide us through this evening. And thank you for the beautiful evening to hold the event.
Amen. Wonderful. It's all the invite. Everything's kind of quick. Moms from the Summit County called me kind of like this because a few weeks ago, and I got to MC it, so I kind of got to see how it played out. I thought it was a really cool way to get questions from the community on concerns that are current in the community. And then we've seen, council meetings and debates and things with public comments that tend to be divisive as of late, right? So Moms for Liberty, how we're involved, they're like, wait a second, they don't have anything to do with the schools, right? So what do you do? Moms for Liberty is a nonpartisan group, federally accredited nonprofit that has chapters popping up all over the place. It's basically to inform people on who they're voting for in every level of government, where it affects choices for our kids. That's it. And Manchester Parents for Choice kind of does the same thing, just on the school level. So I figured they both come together that way. And I thought it was a really cool way to get everyone together. So what I've asked for this evening were questions on 5 topics that have been kind of popping up on the Facebook pages and have come up at city council meetings that are of interest to people in the community. And they're all going to be anonymous on those 5 topics. Everyone will ask the same question to everyone, and they'll have 2 minutes to respond. They already know what the topics are, but they don't know what the questions are, right? So they can just tell me what their stance is on it, and you can get the information firsthand. That's basically it. I want to give everybody the opportunity to introduce themselves. Let's go ahead and
thank you, Amanda. And I'm just used to working on my feet, so that's what I'll do since I'm at the end of the table. Amanda says we got a couple minutes, and so you've heard me
I'm
talk
not going to
before.
put a timer on. If you go rogue, I'm going to call you.
You got to be careful with that.
Okay,
All right. No, let me say this. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate the efforts of the organizers. The more truth we can get out here, the better off we're all going to be. And in fact, there have been some misinformation, and I'm not going to, we try to stay on the high road, and I've made it a practice in my life of trying to stay on the high road, but we got to address what's out there. And so I believe this is a good forum to try to clear up maybe some of the misconceptions that have been out there. Briefly, I think you know my background. I've been around here a long time, and I grew up on Long Lake. Family moved into Firestone Park so long ago that the University of Akron was still a private school, and it was cheaper for tuition if you lived there. And my sister was getting ready to go to school, so we moved into Firestone Park. I ended up graduating from Garfield. Went to work at Firestone Tire and Rubber Company. Worked there for 6 years. While I was working in the rubber shop, well, two things happened. I met and married the love of my life, who's 51 years. We're heading up to 52. And then I went to school at the University of Akron and I got a teaching degree. From there, I taught in the Akron Public Schools from 1975 to 1982. And while I was teaching, I went to law school in the evening and got my law degree in 1982. I practiced law for the next 34 years. Meanwhile, in 2001, I was elected as a township trustee, and I was through the whole process. I was 4 years as a trustee. I was 1 year as a Village of New Franklin council person, and then I became a City of New Franklin council person, and I served in that capacity until 2016. So that's my background in that sense. Tonight's topics that we're going to get at, comprehensive plan, business and economic development, sewer and water, parks and green space, and leadership. And in considering these, I believe they really tie together really well. I'll go into a little more detail later about the comprehensive plan. I was on the ground floor of that. But what's most pertinent about the comprehensive plan in 2004 is what came out of it, what people wanted. And they told us they wanted to preserve the rural character. They understood that retail development was vital to the future. These are findings from the plan. They wanted to focus on Manchester Road 619 and Cleveland-Massillon for development. 47% wanted housing options for seniors when they retired. 65% wanted bike and pedestrian trails, and 80% were happy with police and fire services. That's one topic, comprehensive plan. Business and economic development, that's necessary if we're going to achieve those goals that this city set out for itself back in 2004. Sewer and water, again, is going to be necessary in some places to achieve those goals. And we'll talk specifically about that tonight. Parks and green space are necessary if we want to achieve those goals. And leadership is necessary if we want to achieve those goals. You know, I'm not here tonight to try to win a debate. I'm here to try to help you decide who to vote for. The question is, what kind of leader do you want? My experience, people lead either out of love or they lead out of fear. In my teaching career, I was in an inner city high school and I had a principal who led out of love. And that staff was a family. And great things happened at that school. My next school, I had a principal who led out of fear. And good things didn't happen there. That's the question, I think, for New Franklin at this point in time. Fear does not inspire loyalty. It leads to irrational results, and it's often based on misinformation and falsehoods. I've told you that I want to stay on the high road, but part of that high road is telling the truth. And in this campaign, such as it's been, my opponent, I believe, has been selling fear to this community. Selling fear about assessments that aren't going to happen. Selling fear about housing on Manchester Road and on Donner Drive that's not going to happen. Selling fear about raising taxes that's not going to happen. And, you know, this is a great country. I spent 34 years defending the Constitution. And there's nothing better than electors having a choice. But when you scare people for no reason, that's wrong. And you need to be held accountable, and you have an opportunity to do that. There are people on Donner Drive that are still afraid. It went all the way to the point where we started hearing about AMH housing on Donner Drive. Never been discussed. There's not a plan anywhere in the city that would suggest that. The mayor can't do it. It would have to be planning and zoning and council. And yet we got people on Donner Drive that go to bed at night thinking AMH housing is going to be in their backyard. That's unacceptable. So all I can tell you is, you may not have agreed with what we've done the first 4 years, but we've tried to do it out front. We haven't hidden anything from anybody. When there's been questions, we try to answer them. When there's concern, we form committees. And that's what we've done, and that's what we'll continue to do. And that's the kind of leadership that I believe I've given to you. I believe it's a leadership that you deserve, and that's what I will do for the next 4 years. Thank you.
My name is Bob Ball. I'm a resident of New Franklin. I've lived here my entire life. A couple of years I lived over in Barberton when I first got married. I've been a small business owner of a couple of successful businesses that treated me really well in my life. I have a wife and 4 great kids, and I love this community. Mayor is concerned that I've spoken to people and routed up some concerns in neighborhoods that I haven't even been in, so I don't know really honestly where he gets that stuff from. But in any event, my goal is to make sure that you know the facts. That's actually all I care about. I want you to make an informed decision. If that's me or if that's him, whatever that ultimately is, that's actually on you. We can't start from a place where we don't know what the facts are and then try to make a decision and then find out later. And on that very topic, when the residents over in Norton, over in Nash Heights neighborhood, they were sold that bill of goods. This is what it's going to cost for water and for sewer. And when it, it's okay. And when it actually came in, it was found to not be the case at all. And some of those people were really disappointed. I know some of those people. And so my concern is that will happen here. So my goal on all of this is just to make sure that you understand what the facts are and that you can make an informed decision. So that's actually why I got into doing this race. So.
My name is Kevin Powell. I work in the public sector. I've got 31, almost 32 years in the public sector. All of that time has been in the public utilities. I operate a water plant. I've operated wastewater facilities. I operate a public power facility. We actually started our own internet connectivity, a fiber to the home initiative. The administrative offices, I oversee that stuff, as well as a lot of dealings with city council. I write basically council memos, which end up turning into legislation. So from my end of things, doing this for the last 30-some years, the last thing that I really wanted to do was to come home and do this in my community where I live. But, I'd see things that happened over the course of the years, and it was one of the things where it bothered me, but it didn't bother me enough to get involved. And then as more and more things started happening, and it finally got me up off the couch. And I think that goes back to a few years ago. We started seeing these different ordinances that were on the books and we knew nothing about, because there was, I should actually went down to City Hall and ask them for the ordinance. First, you need to know about the ordinance, but then you have to go down and ask them for it because there's no way to find it. We started finding out there's more restrictive things on our property as property owners that we couldn't do. For instance, the noise ordinance. And we've talked about this many a times, but if you actually read the noise ordinance, there's a lot of things they can do just on their interpretation of it. For instance, like if you have something that's making too much noise, it doesn't even have a gas engine on it, they can give you a cease and desist based off of an apparatus on the noise ordinance. Just saying, it's not what we do, but we have done that. So different things like that has got me involved. The sewer and water has come up many times, and once again, it's about getting accurate information out. And one of the things that we've heard is, we hear questions, if the sewer comes through, do I have to tie into it? The answer's been no. And that is accurate as of today. You don't have to tie into the sewer that comes past your house. But what is being omitted is the fact that if that sewer goes past your house, you still will be assessed roughly $15,000 per the county. It's what it went at the county when we met. That was probably a year and a half, 2 years ago. I had 2 council people, our county councilwoman, and a few residents went out and met with Mr. Wayne. And that was directly from the county. So, it's not that there's inaccurate information at times, it's just there's a lack of all the facts. Perfect. And it's great that we have a water line here, we got a grant to do it, and then Ohio picked up the other half of it, which is great for the community. And it didn't cost the residents a penny. But if those residents want to tie into it and use it, it's going to cost them about $10 grand. And that is based off of the numbers that is currently on the city's website. It's about $7,000 for the fees to Ohio. And then you've got to pay to have a contractor come in and run basically water line from your house out to the street to tie in, the tapping fees and stuff, the water line about $50 a foot. I'd say the average home is about 75 to 100 feet off the road. And then you've got to have your well. That there's no cross contamination between the well and the city. So there's other things that are being omitted. So there's people wanting to know, but they're just not giving you all the stories so you can make an actual informed decision on it. So it's things like that that actually got me to be involved and started attending council meetings. And then, and on top of that, we've got 4 different communities inside of our city. When I say communities, I'm talking school districts. We've got Coventry, we've got Northwest, we've got North, and we've got Manchester. And everybody kind of keeps it inside their own little community, and we don't communicate with anybody else. There's a lot of people that I created a Facebook page. It gets everybody talking, and it kind of brought us all together. So I know what's going on in Norton, and people know what's going on in Coventry. So you know what we do there. And there's a lot of people I met that I didn't even know existed in this community because we kind of keep separate in our little areas. So there's a bunch of things that kind of got me to where I am today, where I want to run for council. And if I figure if I'm going to the meetings, I might as well actually get on council where I can actually have a say in things. Like I said, I'm a longtime resident here. I've lived here 26 years. I've actually lived in the Coventry School District the majority of my life. Married, my wife, daughter's over there. I've got a son who's not here. I've just got a state interest in the community. So I guess that's it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Judy Jones is also on the ballot. She could not be in attendance. I talked to her today, and she sent me an email. She was like, "Tell them I said this." I'm like, "No, no. Send me your words, and I will read it verbatim." Thank you for inviting us tonight. Unfortunately, I cannot attend due to illness, but I wanted to say how much I have enjoyed sitting on council and trying to be a voice for the people of New Franklin. The residents of New Franklin have been the very best people to serve over the years. They continue to make our community one of the best areas to live in and raise our families in. They always amaze me with their support and kindness. I cannot express what an honor and a privilege to be on the City of New Franklin Council. Thank you all for the help you have given me over the years. Sincerely, Judy Jones. Also, just to kind of touch base, I'm going to get them both the questions so they can respond to them, or if you have questions, if you want to know their responses, you can reach out that way. They're both totally okay with me doing that. So I'll post a follow-up on that. And Mr. Daniels had a prior engagement, but he recorded a video. I told him I can't really show it on my iPhone, so this is low-tech stuff going on here, people. So hopefully it's loud enough you can hear it, but he's going to push it out on social media later, or I'll post it for him on this. So we'll see how we do. It's loud enough. and okay, I'll tell you what. You want to hear what Mr. Daniels has to say? Come to me afterwards and I'll play it over here. Is that cool? Cool. Very good. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so what we did here was I have 1, 2, 3. I think that's okay. We got 5 topics. 1 question. There might not be 1 question from each topic, but we'll go through. They're anonymous. The reason I did it this way is if the questions came out, Jack Daniels, quiet. Everything is completely unbiased and anonymous, right? You saw everyone drop these questions in the basket, so it wasn't. I mean, I don't have questions in there. Why didn't I put questions in there? I'm a taxpayer. I'm just gonna ask you. Okay. So we're gonna do the 2 minute. Well, 2 minutes by. Keep it short. Okay. All right. So we're gonna start with. Ooh. We don't have one to go with the topic, so let's just go through the questions that we have. How about that? Let's start with the comprehensive plan. First question, and we'll start with Mayor Adamson and work this way, and then next question we'll start there. Yeah. Okay. First question on the comprehensive plan. 20+ year plan. Any updates you would like to see? And I would infer that it's 20+ year plan. Any updates you would like to see to the plan?
All right, and would it be okay if I talk a little bit about the plan in general?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Yeah, the comprehensive plan. The history of this is actually dear to my heart because when I got elected as a trustee in 2001, we were township, and I wanted to get a sense of where we ought to be and what we ought to do planning wise. All right. And so I reached out to a gentleman by the name of Donald Jenkins. And Donald Jenkins is a retired, he just passed away in December of last year, 92 years old. But in 2001, he was my former dean from the School of Law. He was the United States Air Force Major General who had flown combat tours in Korea, then became a law school dean, and he was a Bath Township trustee. And I went and had lunch with Dean Jenkins, and I said, listen, I'm a trustee now, what should I do? And he said, well, you're going to do some basic things. He said, but the one thing that you need to do, probably as more than anything else, is to have a comprehensive land use plan. Because at that time, we had more green space, and still do, than anybody else in Summit County. And he said, if you want to have some type of controlled development, you need a plan to support that. So on his recommendation, I took that back to the other trustees, and eventually they agreed that we pursue that course. We sent out requests for proposals. We hired a consultant through 2001. And in 2002, the consultant had been selected and the steering committee had been appointed. It consisted of 16 members. Now, that plan committee, and here's why I tell you that. Because I'll get around to the question is what needs to, what else do we need to do with it? We're already talking about doing an update on it, and that makes sense. By the same token, you might agree, if you've lived here a long time, that there hasn't been a whole lot change since 2004 when we adopted the plan. But at that time, and I think the demographic still looks a lot the same. A lot of you people who were living here then and you're living here now. And so we believe that the information that we got was reliable. And the process involved public visioning workshops around the city, and we went to all 4 quadrants of the city, and we held those out at schools, etc., and talked about what people wanted. There was data collection. There was analysis that included an ecosystem analysis. There was a survey that was prepared by the consultants that went out to all the households, and we had a 30% response rate, and the experts tell you when you're around 30%, that's a reliable figure. Based on all that information, 24 major issues were identified for consideration. And if you go on our website, you can take a look at the comprehensive plan and you'll see what those were. So in January of '04, that committee met. The survey went out in October of 2002, and the committee met throughout 2003. And finally, in January 2004, the comprehensive plan was issued. So that was like this 17 years ago. The findings I alluded to a little bit earlier. What people thought then, and you can compare it to what you think now. But again, they said that there was a good quality of life. They wanted to preserve the rural character. They said that retail development is vital to the future. And they identified Manchester Road, 619, and Cleveland-Massillon as the primary areas where that development would occur. 47% noted that there were limited housing options for seniors. And this is something that, again, is dear to my heart. I can tell you how many times I've had calls from the day I walked in there, people saying, you know, I raised my kids here, I don't want to keep the house anymore, but I want to live here. And I'd like some kind of senior housing. I'd like maybe a little condo like they have along Presswork or somewhere. And we'd like a place to kind of downsize to, but we want to stay in New Franklin, and they just don't exist. And 47% of the people on this survey agreed with that and wanted more options. 65% wanted bike trails and pedestrian trails. They wanted more recreation. 80% said they were happy with the services they were getting. And there was a suggestion to preserve larger lots in undeveloped areas. And that led eventually to a revision of our zoning code for the creation of conservation districts, which you'll see on our zoning map, that are 5-acre minimums. So all of those things came out of that plan back then. Do we need an update? Well, I'll touch on this right now, and then we'll talk about an update. When the water, not a whole lot happened from 2004, at least until I came in here. When I became mayor in 2018, things weren't dramatically different. A lot of these things hadn't happened. There was no water, there was no sewer, and it was a little bit stagnant. You know, and we'll talk about some of those areas in just a second, a little bit later. But as it related to the comprehensive plan, as you know, we ended up with water here. And I'll try not to be too long-winded, but it was a little bit more than we got water, okay? And I'll tell you what that story is. I'll try to make that brief when I get to it. But when the water came to Manchester Road, now, we're in a position of, okay, maybe we can start moving along the path of this comprehensive plan of what the people said. They'd like to see some retail development. We'd like to have some increase in the income tax base only. And I'll say again, so everybody's clear, the mayor can't raise taxes, property taxes. You guys raise taxes. Voters raise taxes. Those are ballot issues. But would we like to see some increased income tax revenue for the city? If we want to keep the services that 80% of the people were happy with, yeah, we're going to have to because costs go up. So when we looked at Manchester Road, we first started talking about some of the very things that people had talked about before, what they'd like to see. Some retail development and maybe some senior housing. And those are the things that we talked about. Long answer to a short question. Yes, we do believe the time is right for an update on that comprehensive plan. And we have already had that discussion. We're in the process of putting together requests for proposals to select the consultant to lead us through that. I would look to see the steering committee appointed, hopefully by the end of the year, and start progress on that at the beginning of next year. Thank you.
I'm going to have you stay up there. Yeah. We had 2 questions on the comprehensive plan, and you guys, I'm going to ask, it's kind of a follow-up to that. So okay. I'm just going to wrap them together. So we'll just do the comprehensive plan. Take as much time as you'd like on it, right? And then we'll set timers for the next thing. Is that okay? Obviously, it's okay. In the 2004 okay, let me do this first. That question came from a resident or a taxpayer. This one comes from a resident taxpayer and a small business owner. In the 2004 comprehensive plan, 82% of people surveyed wanted to maintain a rural character in New Franklin. What would you do to ensure that?
I think what we have to do, and part of it is going to define itself, okay? But it's really, it's easy to use a catchphrase, but it's true. Control development. You know, where do we want to see development? And it's not like we can rub a crystal ball and say, well, we'd like to have this here, we'd like to have an Aldi over here, and I'd like to have a Walgreens over there, and boom, they're going to be there. You know, that kind of development is going to be driven by people who own property and by businesses. But we can control it to the extent of what goes where. All right, and we've done that up to this point in time. We do that through zoning. And again, the mayor doesn't, I don't control the zoning maps. The zoning maps are drawn. The uses are indicated in the zoning code. If people want to have some variation from that, they have to go through planning and zoning. And if they want to change the district altogether, it has to go not just through planning and zoning and public hearings, but then it goes to city council and public hearings, and then city council is charged with changing that zoning map. So there's already been forethought given to what should go where within that. So I think in terms of preserving the rural character, you know, the second thing is this: we have no highway in New Franklin. All right, I hear people talk about, I don't want to be green. All right, I think everybody in this tent understands we're never going to be green. And that's okay. If we want to be in green, we'd be living in green. All right? We want to be New Franklin. But we don't have to worry about that because it's highways that bring widespread development, because it's the traffic that goes up and down those highways that fuel those businesses that pop up there. So we're going to have, you know, I think we could add some things, and we're talking to people. I talked to a lot of people who say, you know, not all that long ago, we had a drugstore and a grocery store in New Franklin. You know, wouldn't it be nice if we had a drugstore and a grocery store in New Franklin? And I think so. Okay? And we're talking to people about that. Now that we've got water and sewer coming, and we'll talk about that soon, 290 through Manchester Road, you know, that can happen again because it's not coming without those things. Now, do we want to put one in every corner? No. Okay? Do we want to do anything that disturbs the place that we live? No. All right? Hey, I got 50 plus years here, all right? My kids all graduated here. I got grandchildren here, okay? That's their city, all right? So we're not gonna do anything to disturb this. This is why we're here, all right? And everything that we've done has been considerate in that sense in the 4 years I've been here, and that's what'll happen in the next 4 years. Thank you.
I'm gonna read it again. So, two-part question. I can read them separate if you want. Just let me know. I'm going to read another part. Any updates to the plan you would like to see? That's 20 years old. And 82% of the people surveyed wanted to maintain a rural character in New Franklin. What would you do to ensure that?
So the comprehensive plan is 20 years old. And when it was made, we didn't have cell phones to speak of. We didn't have internet to speak of. We didn't have everything in the community has changed over the last 20 years. That plan is way out of date. And where some of the discussion the mayor's had is right. Businesses want to see highway, they want to see water, they want to see sewer. Those are the things they look for to move into a community. We have no highway. We're not getting a highway. It's never going to change. We're not on the way to somewhere. We're not on the way home from somewhere. To move a business into this community, the first thing they're going to ask for is a tax break because they're moving a business into this community. So if we spend the money on the comprehensive plan to add water and sewer in these areas to develop and that type of thing, what we're ultimately doing is gambling that after we spend that money, whatever that dollars and cents looks like, that someone will come in and pay the bill for it, except those first people who come in here are going to ask for a tax break. When or if those businesses do not come into this community and take advantage of those resources, you are paying the bill. That's all there is to it. We can talk about, you know, trying to incentivize people to do this, that, whatever. I was in business for a long time, and, you know, I spoke about moving my business over to New Franklin, and it frankly just didn't make sense for me. There's 15,000 people that live here. It's hard to operate a business out of that small of a community and actually build enough revenue to run the business. My business, the last business I owned, only had 4 employees, and I honestly could not have paid the bill for those 4 employees if everyone here was a participant in that business. So it's a nice idea to say we're going to get fill in the blank, Tim Hortons. I don't care what the thing is to come in here. It is unlikely that they're going to do that. Second, if those people over on Donner who are upset about development being directed down their house, the comprehensive plan clearly says right on it that we're looking at these areas for high density housing. And the mayor has said that, hey, we just want some senior living in there, and that's all that is, except he's also said that he wants to raise the amount of taxes we have by increasing the number of residents. The only way we can increase the number of residents is they have homes to live in. The only way to do that is get more people in a smaller space. That says to me it is not the rural nature of this community. We all live on large lots. We all live here on purpose. All of us could live in Barberton Green or Akron or whatever it is on much smaller lots with much closer neighbors. We choose to live here, and part of when we choose to live here, we bite off the bill that it's going to cost us more money to live here. We know that. We pay more taxes than almost all of the other communities around us, and it is because we don't have business here. The part of the plan that I think the mayor's missed is the way that the growth is actually done is you incentivize businesses that are already here to join together, make a council, try to figure out what their needs are, and try to get them to be successful so they don't leave. Because every business that leaves, 10 of us are picking up the tax bill that he was paying while he was here. So what we need to do is grow the businesses that are already here and grow them in a way that it incentivizes other people to move back into this area and actually bring business with it. That's how that development's actually done. If there are businesses that need water and sewer, whatever that looks like, those are all conversations that I think everyone is willing to have, because no one wants to run a business off because we don't want to have any services available for them. And there was such a pushback with the original plan of water and sewer, such a pushback that Kevin and myself, a couple other people were in a meeting with Mike Wentz in Summit County. They said that if there's not 85% buy-in on water and sewer, they wouldn't do the project. There was such a pushback on that we, as a city, this administration, pursued them to continue to run down the Manchester corridor. And I think that's probably the right way to go. We do need to have some over in that area, so we can bring some businesses in that area, change some of the businesses that are in that area. But all of those things that we talk about, when we talk about corporate parks, and we talk about development, high density housing, whatever that looks like, none of that is the rural nature of New Franklin. And I moved here because of the new rural nature of New Franklin. I live here because of that. So when we talk about those developments, what you, the voter, are actually saying is, I'm willing to have that stuff done. And we're all willing to have some of that stuff done, not in our backyard. And the people on Donner are upset because some of those plans have circles that are drawn right next to their houses, and they're like, wait a minute, we live here. And they're upset about that. So, I don't have an opinion about that ultimately, but the plan is what the plan is. So, and then what I would do to keep the rural nature of the community is I would actually work hard with businessmen that are already here to form a group of people, or form a committee, a group, to get together and discuss what their needs are so we can meet those needs. And I would actually spend more time in making sure you, the voter, know actually what is going on, rather than trying to shop around to developers' property that I don't even own, so that we can push an agenda that nobody I've spoken to even once, and then tell you at the last minute, hey, sorry, I thought you understood that. That's just not how I operate. So that's how I would actually try to keep it a small residential.
This was the question from a resident or taxpayer. 20+ year plan, any updates you would like to see? And then the follow-up to that is from a resident and small business owner. Of the same plan, 82% of the people surveyed wanted to maintain a rural character in New Franklin.
So, as I mentioned before, my background is in utilities. And basically, city operations are, at least in my experiences, in one or two different ways. One is a general fund, which would be your service department, and various different things along those lines. Public administration. Those come out of your general fund tax dollars. The majority of the stuff that I deal with is what they call an enterprise fund. We have to reside off of the revenues we bring in, meaning you've got to be very fiscally responsible. And anything that I look at in city and local government, I've always been thinking that fiscal responsibility, that's what I try to bring to the table as far as anything that I want to propose or do. I had mentioned revising the comprehensive plan a while back, and just happen to have firsthand knowledge of how we do it where I work. And what the mayor has proposed is, you mentioned it just a second ago about getting proposals to have the comprehensive plan revised. That comes with a price tag of per his numbers, about $100,000. That's a lot of money. And like, I know there are other things to do something similar. Break the comprehensive plan down into various parts. If you got your business section of your comprehensive plan, we're going to get business-like-minded people in the community to form a committee. They sit down, they go through the comprehensive plan. We're going to do things in there that don't great. We move on. If there are things that don't really apply to today's business world and what we think the comprehensive plan should do for the city of Franklin, we make adjustments to those. And then before all that plan gets put together and enacted, it goes to council. It basically gets vetted. By doing that, you're going to save your $100,000. You might spend $10,000 to your consultant versus spending $100,000, and those funds will be used for other things, more important things. Things that are in the comprehensive plan, I think, as Bob had mentioned, there's a lot of things that's different today than back in 2004. Netflix, they didn't get started until 2007. Zoom, today's business world is not what it was 2 years ago. We've got more people working from home today than we've ever had. Businesses, the actual business model isn't the same as it used to be. People aren't building office buildings. Once again, where I work, we've got a very large insurance company that is housed there. They got about 1,500 employees. The only people that actually report to that facility are the people who keep the building operating. All those other people are working remotely. They're working from home. At the state level, they're actually in the process of looking at revising the income tax and how that income tax is paid. Currently, if you work in, say, Akron, and that's where your home office is, your payroll taxes are paid, your income tax is paid to Akron. What they're looking at making changes now is if you actually work at Akron, but you're working remotely from New Franklin, and the majority of your time is spent in New Franklin will actually get those payroll taxes. That could be a huge influx of money to the city, which may alleviate some of the stress we're going to be feeling from some of the rising costs. I think stuff like that should be looked at before you get into completely redeveloping the comprehensive plan and redraft it. That may change what we want to see on the Main Street or Manchester Road corridor. One of the other things I'd like to see in the comprehensive plan is highlight our attributes. As I've heard mentioned by both these guys, we don't have a highway that comes through here. So if we get sewer, we get water, great. We still don't have a major highway to get goods out of here. So your production and manufacturing is probably not going to be something you're going to see here. What I've heard a lot of people talk about is the stores, the shops, and stuff like that. We could find there's ways to entice different types of businesses in here. It's actually going to play off our attributes and make us more like a little boutique type Main Street, if you will, or Manchester corridor, and something that's going to be more unique to our area. The second part of the question.
Second part is 82% of the people surveyed in 2004 wanted to maintain a rural character in New Franklin. What would you do to ensure that?
Well, I can remember when we were going through the whole process of voting to become a city, merger, all that stuff. And a lot of that was sold to, at least in my recollection, was sold to us as we want to become a city to preserve what we have. It wasn't to become the next Green, the next Akron. It was to keep everything the way that it is. And to me, that means keeping our green spaces, keeping the bigger yards. And yes, I get we need some more housing. That's what the majority of people want. But I think that needs to be done in a smart and methodical way. Because once you start building this stuff, it doesn't go away. It's here for the rest of our lives. And one of my concerns is when you start looking at, we've heard density housing. It can start off great. Maintenance-free living, great idea, great concept. But, there's a town north of us, Chicago Falls. They had an area that was maintenance-free living, Timbertown. Beautiful neighborhood, very nice neighborhood. Drive through it today. It's not the same that it was 20 years ago. And that is my concern when we start talking about building stuff like this. It's in a comprehensive plan, great. We need to do something along those lines, and we're going to do it. We need to do it smart. We need to think about it. We need to vet it with the community. It doesn't need to be something that's put on the city's website that somebody stumbles across and it starts this firestorm of people asking questions. You know, based off of that, I went to the video of the actual presentation, and I can see why people were actually up in arms about that. If you watch a presentation from the mayor and Jennifer Six, giving to some of the business owners and other people, you know, they talk about the initial part of the water line and stuff like that, how they got there. But then they get into the slides that have actually become kind of a hot button topic lately. And Jennifer Six starts talking about how, you know, they're going to be doing this high density housing. She talks about they're going to be shopping it out to the developers. And she starts going on all this, et cetera. It's probably a couple minutes of talking. And then, you know, the mayor starts talking about it. And it gets into how we know what it's going to look like in 50 years, but we can't wait 50 years. We're going to be aggressive on this. It just starts going. So I get where some of these people get upset about that. And it's because the message is put out there. And had they done some communication up front with this, you probably wouldn't have had that blowback on it. But I told them about that as well. They just, we haven't got to. They actually have improved greatly on communication. But as far as the things I'd like to see in the comprehensive plan, I don't know that I can even give you a good answer on that today, because I think there's a lot of stuff we need to do first before we can really decide what needs to go in there, because so many things have changed.
I'm going to turn into an icicle, and I'm going to make sure that that is still going. So if you want to like run a lap or something, let's do it.
No way, it's still recording. That's awesome. Oh, my computer was gonna restart. See, look at that. Oh, it's not gonna let me snooze it. You got 36 minutes, people.
So we're going to time these because it's cold. Conundrum. Let's see. We're going to stay on the same kind of frame. The next topic was sewer and water. This is from a resident or taxpayer. What happens if the opt-in falls below county requirement? And we'll start with Mr. Balls.
So I was in a meeting with Mike Wentz about this very topic, and he was very clear that if they didn't have 85% buy-in, they would not do the project. At the time, we were kind of led to believe, or outright told, that we were being forced to take water and sewer from the EPA or from Summit County. It was really not clear. In any event, that's what caused myself and a couple other people to go up and actually have a meeting with Mike about what that looked like and what the discussions were actually. And they said they're not making us take water and sewer. That's a completely voluntary program, and that we pursued them to actually get water and sewer brought over here. So, you know, that's actually where the line was for them. Now, you know, ultimately, it's a numbers game for them. If they don't have enough people buy into the water and sewer, they can't pay to maintain the water and sewer going forward. That just means it's either higher rates for those who do hook up to it, or it costs us more money to actually have it brought over here. And this water line that's being run now, you know, that's about $1 million a mile to be run. You know, it's expensive stuff to have done. The sewer will be far more expensive to have done. I think the original plan looked like $8.5 million for phase one. And they were talking about the final phase, all of New Franklin being done, at somewhere around the $100 million mark. So when we talk about that kind of money, with 15,000 residents, you know, there's no way we're going to fund that here. You know, it'll just be expensive outright. So there'll be happy grants and things pursued to try to take on some of that. And businesses, I think, where the mayor is mostly, try to get the business in here to support that, because if they can generate the tax revenue through the businesses, the business want this stuff, they'll pay more to actually make some of that stuff happen, because they're not working on the same budgets we are. But, you know, according to Mike, if it fell below the 80-85%, they just wouldn't do the project. So I don't know how we would plot them differently to continue that process, but that's where this line is drawn.
Can you see this? Awesome. Thank you very much. I'm gonna ask the question again, and this is better than me. I like the timer going up, like, well, it's gonna go off. So that question was, what happens if percent of opt-in falls below county requirement?
All right, so as I mentioned, in utilities, I mean, the water and sewer is actually, I've spent the last 37 years in those fields the entire time. of opt-in, if it falls below the 80, 85%, they're not going to run it for the sewer. The water, I think their number might be a little lower, but we're talking different entities here suing us as well. We're talking Aqua, Ohio, who is a privatized water system, and we're talking Summit County Environmental Services. So on the sewer, which is what the question was, if you get below that 80-some%, they're not going to run the sewer line. Going back to some of the questions you've heard about, is it going to be mandatory? Keep in mind the Summit County sewer is in the same government as the Summit County Health Department. So if they run past your house, you have a septic, you don't tie into it, you still have to pay the $15,000 for that line to go past your house. And that number was per Summit County. But they've done 2 other projects, and they said it was right around, one was at 15, one was a little over 15. So no, you don't have to tie into the sewer line, you still have to pay for the assessment. And they'll be nice, and they'll spread that out over 10, 15, 20 years, whatever that looks like. But, as far as your septic, so it goes past my house, I don't tie into it. They had enough participation to actually run the line, but now my sewer or my septic starts having issues. Summit County Health's going to come out, and they're going to do an assessment. They got to give me a permit to actually have my septic replaced. What's the chances of them giving me a permit to repair my septic when there's a sewer line right up from my house? Probably kind of slim, I'm thinking. But I can't really think of anything else to talk about because that question's pretty straightforward.
I've got about 5 minutes on that. 1 minute and 1
Get
second.
3, good sir, we are told.
I can figure.
But afterwards, anybody can come talk to you.
Okay. Well, listen. I'll try to kind of go quickly on this. This is really important topic. Okay. Correct. The procedure. And Mike Wendt is now retired. Mike Finney is now the head of Summit County Sanitary Sewers. We're meeting with him regularly. I got another meeting with him in November. It's correct that if county council approved sewers and approved assessments, that's county council's choice. That's not the city's choice. But it's a long, long way from there. And I'll try to cut to the chase of what we did with sewers. When I came into office, they had a plan, and you can find it on our website. And they were going to come up from the Barberton wastewater plant up to 93. They were going to go down to Grace Church because that's where the gravity ends, and they're going back into the neighborhoods. And that was the plan. That was introduced, and it was going to be 3 to 5 years. And yes, they said they're going to come out, they're going to have public hearings, and then they're going to do a survey. And then if the survey results were high enough, then they would take it to county council, not city council, to get assessments approved. So that's the way that process was going to happen. The feeling was, well, they had a change in office. Mike Wendt retired. Mike Finney came in. COVID hit. Money dried up, and that plan was almost on the shelf. We were interested in getting that sewer up to 93 because we already knew we were going to get the water up there. And we weren't trying to get it into the neighborhoods. And we were successful in that with negotiation to get the county to agree with that phase and that phase only to come up. And that'll happen probably in about 2 years. It'll be in the ground. There's already dry lines. And they'll come up from the wastewater plant to 93, and they'll come up 93, and they'll go down to Grace. Any assessments, we're in a situation where we've got ARPA money and we got CDBG money that we can use to cover any assessments for any of the residents along that way. So again, no assessments. And the sewer is, again, if you want to tie in, that's your business. All right. But we got businesses up on 93 that want it, and we were able to make that happen without it going into the neighborhoods and without it costing people assessments, anything mandatory at that time.
Can I get a clarification real quick? Paul, are you saying there's no assessments going to happen to anybody with that sewer line in front of their house?
I'm talking about the original line from
that's
what they're
in there
talking
right now,
about up
that's dry.
Vanderhoof to Manchester Road, Manchester down to Grace.
Yes.
Yeah. We're in a situation where we have funds that can cover that in that circumstance because we know those particular people haven't asked for it. And really, we're talking about some select homes on Vanderhoof and some homes on some residential on 93. And we're in a situation where we can cover that with ARPA funds, which we're permitted to do, which is a very technical area that fortunately we're fluent in. Thanks.
Thank you.
And it's under the wire.
Okay, there's can we get clarification on what ARPA funds are being my neighborhood on Swagger, they're not going to pay for my sewer in my neighborhood, I'd still be assessed that, is that correct?
Well, first of all, when you say it's coming into your neighborhood,
No, I'm
Swagger,
saying- I'm
which I don't even think that your Swagger isn't even in the plan. You know that, don't you?
No, it actually is. If you
But not in the first year. Not in
No, I'm
the
not
first
saying,
year.
I'm talking down.
All right, that's 10 years down the road.
Well,
All right, I gotta rein you guys in.
Okay.
What's
Now,
the point?
that particular, we'll have to address those things piece by piece.
Let's do this. After this, we'll have a sewer and water powwow over there. Is that okay? All right, I appreciate it.
So do we.
Okay, 3 more questions, and I said I would read them verbatim, so do not shoot the messenger. We're from the community, right? Just kill me. All right, we are with Mr. Powell. This one is from a resident or someone employed, a taxpayer. And what are your qualifications? Oh, it's not for you because you're not giving me mayor. So we're gonna skip you. You want to weigh in on the question? Oh, I'll ask you the question and you can determine. Oh, okay. Let's do it. We're just doing it, all right? What are your qualifications for mayor of New Franklin? Any experience except failed businesses? I did not write the question. I will read it again. What are your qualifications for mayor of New Franklin? Any experience except failed businesses?
All right, so
I'm gonna set 2-minute timer on this one.
except failed businesses.
No,
I'm
no.
assuming businesses that are still active. So I do have 2 personal businesses as well as being a municipal employee. I've got an electrical contracting company. I also have a water operation service. So I take care of small water systems. But my experience that really reflects most to qualifications for the city of Franklin. The services are aspects of public operation. Fortunately, I've had those experiences. I've done lifetime projects. I've done multiple lifetime projects. We started a utility with another department. So when I say we got public power, we have our own essentially first energy, if you will, for Ohio Energy.
You want to let them know where you work because there are people that came in a little bit after that you worked for the city of Hudson.
I didn't say that, but okay.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to say that. Another city.
Which city?
None.
So anyways, we have our own public power. So we have our own line trucks, pocket trucks, substations, all this other stuff. So we did a startup of a internet connectivity. Well, one of the things our businesses needed was something, a high-speed connectivity because the incumbent in the area, which was Windstream at the time, they couldn't provide what the business needed. We provided fiber to the premise. We could give them up to a 10 gig connection. I was very instrumental in doing that. I've also, we installed a brine well at our water facility treatment plant. So our water treatment facility uses salt to regenerate ion exchange softeners. Those softeners intend used to soften the water. We were spending about $130,000, $140,000 a year on salt. This was 3 years ago, and the prices were escalating about 10% per year. We did some research, talked to a few places that work salt and stuff, and we installed a injection solution mining. So essentially, we drilled a hole 3,000 feet underground. We had to navigate all the ODNR, EPA regulations, everything else. We are now we're salt sufficient. We don't have to buy salt from anywhere. We don't have salt's not trucked in. We still do for the streets, but for the water plant, we pull it right out of the ground, right on the property, and then we pull out enough where we use it for pre-treatment of the streets. I was heavily involved with it. That was one of my other projects. We've moved the park. There's so much that I've done. I'm not going to get into it.
I gave 3. That wasn't fair.
Okay, so as far as my qualifications, I deal with the legislative process. I'm at council meetings all the time. I'll be there next Tuesday, actually. I do the budgeting. I do all this. New Franklin has a budget of $12 million, roughly, give or take, per year. My budgets for my departments that I deal with on an annual basis is over $23 million per year. I think I might have a few qualifications.
Want to read it again?
Why
have some, or she ought to have some experience in the public sector, because it's not like the private sector in so many ways, and I won't take my time up to tell you that, but that won't surprise you. I don't think it's a job where you start at the top. I think that it was invaluable to have years as a council person before ascending to that position. So I think there ought to be some foundation in public service and some experience along the way. And then beyond that, what I have found sitting in that seat is the legal background is a big deal. There's a whole lot of what happens in that office that has to do with statutory regulations, with administrative rules, with discerning regulations at the county level, at the state level, at the federal level. Weaving our way through the CARES Act was a real challenge, and the people on council know that, because we kept getting different information from the Office of Budget Management from the federal government. You know what? It helped 36 years of going through that kind of thing to be able to make it through that maze. And we made it through that maze extremely successfully and used every penny. And we also spent a lot of time making sure that our local businesses were able to take advantage of every opportunity and every nickel that was available to them through the CARES Act. Because I sat on Zoom calls with people that hadn't even read it. Okay, and then a lot of people, and I'm talking about mayors, et cetera, who read it but didn't understand it. Okay, but there was a blessing to have a legal background. So now, that doesn't mean you got to be a lawyer to be a mayor, but it doesn't hurt. And the last thing I'll say is this. This job, in terms of qualifications, this is about problem solving. This is about listening to people. This is about being open to suggestion. This is about networking. The qualifications, this is about reputation in the community. And I can tell you a lot of things that have happened of those $10 million that we brought in here. Not like this, and they didn't give it to everybody. Okay, that little water thing that we got for $4 million, there were 2 of them in the state of Ohio. And we got the biggest one. We got $176,000 for the Manchester schools for safety back when everybody was worried about people coming in and shooting people. $176,000 we got for them because we weaved our way through the federal COPS grant, and they only gave 7 of those in the state of Ohio. And we got 1 in our backyard. And when I talk to the county executive, I know her. And the sheriff. And the judge.
So my life has been around supporting myself and my businesses. When you're a small businessman, if you make a mistake, I can't just hand the bill to the taxpayer and say, hey, I need you guys to pay this. When I make a mistake, it comes home to roost with me, and it puts me out of business. It makes me very responsible with my money and my decisions. It makes me very responsible to each and every person that walks through the door and wants service at my business. I have not one boss. I have 18,000 bosses, because that's how many people came in a year at my shop to talk to me about what they needed done. And they all have something they need done. I ended up spending a considerable amount of time trying to negotiate with them and make that and try to bring them to conclusions of, hey, that mower may not be worth fixing, or that one is worth fixing, or whatever that ultimately looks like, because I have people skills to actually work with the people who are here to try to actually do the thing that they needed done. This city does not run differently than that. You all have a vested interest in this community. We all love this community. We all live here on purpose. We all love this community. So when you have problems, when you have needs, you don't want to go talk to the lawyer. You want to go talk to the guy who lets you solve your problem. And I'm okay with laundry, and that's all good stuff. But we actually hire a lawyer on staff retain a lawyer for the city to answer questions that are legal questions. So it isn't that you have to have all these qualifications. You surround yourself with people who do know the answers to the questions that you're asking. Because no one can know all the questions. No one can know all the answers. That's all there is to it. And if you can't have people around you that you can lean on to actually try to get the information you want, you're really in trouble off the get-go.
one's under leadership, and this one is from a taxpayer, a resident or employee here. What is your process to promote from ranks instead of allowing retirees being heads of departments? Do you want to read it again?
No, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah, what we're talking about there is succession planning. And that's one of the things that, well, we needed to upgrade our succession planning. Let me say that. That's one of the things I found when I came into the city. So, and we worked hard on that in that regard. And I'll go to specifics because there is a history in New Franklin when our police chief hit retirement age, and a lot of it has to do with the public employees retirement system and what people have to do at a certain time to get maximum benefit. And several years ago, when our police chief got ready to retire, the feeling was that he was still the man for the job, and he was permitted then to retire and then be rehired in his position. We had no specific second in command in the police department at that point in time. The captain's role was open. And we had a lieutenant, and we had some sergeants. So that was the situation when I came in the door. In the fire side of things, we ran into the same situation with our fire chief, who does a magnificent job, I think. And 80% of the people back in 2004 thought so too, and hopefully you do too. And then we have an assistant chief who's got a number of years in the system as well. And when it came time for him to retire, we faced the same type of situation. I will say that we may not have been in the ideal situation for succession planning, but that's not something that you walk in the door and do. That has to be in place as you matriculate through the job. So what we did in that situation, we agreed to rehire the chief. I think it was given the fact that COVID hit almost immediately thereafter. It turned out to be the right move for you folks that we had an experienced team with our chief and with our assistant chief, who is certainly able and ready to move into that position. Frankly, the question became, did we have a person who was ready to move into that assistant chief position? And that's an open question at this point in time, quite frankly. And I think the department might tell you the same thing. That's something that we're working on. And that's something that we're cognizant of. And we have people that I believe are going to be in position to move into those settings, but not yet. From the police side of things, we did what normally we wouldn't like to do. We hired from outside. And there was a good reason for that. And we got a fantastic candidate. And fortunately for us, it was somebody who was born and raised here. And he's done a magnificent job, had 17 years on the Akron Police Department. So, and it was well thought of there. And he's brought so much experience and expertise to our department that our police department, don't take my word for it, talk to the guys. It's the strongest that it's ever been. And they will tell you that. And we did the same thing in the service department. We brought in, we filled a second in command, which we didn't have, and now we do. And then we're grooming some guys to come up behind in that regard as well. Sorry for going over. Thank you.
What is your process to promote from ranks instead of allowing retirees being heads of departments?
So the mayor and I agree almost wholeheartedly on this. You raise up leaders around you, people that you invest in, you use time, money, education, whatever that ultimately looks like, so that they are the best at what they actually do, because you're relying on them to know the answers to the questions you don't know. You work from the bottom up, and you continue to raise up leaders, and you don't run into situations where you're in a spot where you have to rehire a retiree. I'm not saying that that's not what we had to do here. I mean, that solution was better than no solution. So, but that is actually how you do it. You raise them up from the bottom up. I lead a church organization. There's about 200 men, women on it, and that's exactly how we operate. We spend time with each one of them, investing in them so that they actually are top of their game. They know exactly what it is, and when they move into leadership roles, we know what to expect from them because we've worked with them for years and years and years and years.
What is your process to promote from ranks instead of allowing retirees being heads of departments?
How many minutes do I get?
There's no giving of minutes.
Okay, so
Let's go.
I got about 40-some employees all together that work for me. Honestly, our biggest assets where I work, it's not our $300,000 line trucks. It's not our, all the expensive equipment. It's our employees. We spend a lot of money between apprenticeships, between all the training we send them to, the monthly training. We send these people to classes out of town and everything else. We invest heavily in our employees, just so we know they're the best trained, there's safety's there, and at the end of the day, those are the people who are going to step up through the ranks and fill the voids when people retire. One of the things that I don't know if everybody understands, when you retire from a public pension, they pay your retirement off what they call the FAS, it's your final average salary. And I'll speak for myself, and the police and fire are very similar. When you retire from that, so if I retire with 32 years of service, essentially that ends up being like 72% of my FAS. So let's say for easy math purposes, I'm making $100,000 a year. I retire, now my pension is $72,000 per year that I get in the mailbox every year for just participating in that program. When you retire and you rehire somebody, they still get that $72,000 a year in their mailbox, and they're getting their wage on top of that. That's great. They just hit the cash lottery. It's wonderful. But if you're going to rehire somebody, let them retire and rehire. And I brought this up in one of the council meetings when we were talking about the last rehire. Make it a win for the city. Don't bring him back at 100% of his previous wage. He's already making out. The guy just got $72,000 in the mailbox. He's going to come back and work. True. Keep doing it at a reduced rate and let him work back up through the steps like any other new hire would. You bring him back and take 70% of his wage. You're still saving money as a city because now you're not paying him the same dollar you were before he retired. He's making out because he just increased his take home by probably 50%, and there's a win there for him. As far as hiring up through the ranks, I mean, I've done that pretty much my whole career, everywhere that I could. One of the things that I've been doing lately for the last year or so is we do these 6-month shadow programs. So when I know that we've got somebody who's going to be retiring, we put this job out for bid. Usually it's a manager position. We'll put that out for bid. We select, and if we don't know who we're going to select, we'll actually give a trial period of 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks per person that was interested in it. We let them shadow that supervisor. We see how they do. We see how they interact with the public. We see how they interact with the staff and how they handle projects and all these other things. And off that, we make an informed decision as to who we want to be that guy. And then we give him 6 months, basically being the best friend of the guy that's going to be retiring. He's learning everything from that guy. Because once that guy leaves, you're not picking up the phone and calling him to find out what you did at Mrs. Jones' house last week and how you fixed this problem. We try to, in short, we just try to do the best and get as much training as we can to people and prepare them to rise up to the occasion.
Last question, my cold friends. Thanks, Mother Nature, for that. This one is from a resident and small business owner, and it is on business and economic development. How do you feel, and we're going to start with you, Mr. Ballard. Yep. How do you feel about using eminent domain to take private property for residential or commercial development?
I think it's a terrible idea. You people you own something, you invested in it, you have pride in the thing that you have. Who am I to come along and say, hey, we want to do this, so I'm just going to take your property? I think it's a horrendously bad idea. It happens all the time. When you end up with a development, whatever that looks like, housing, high density housing, business park, or whatever that ultimately looks like, and one guy won't get off this piece of property, it stops the entire project. And so cities sometimes are forced to be in a position to make a decision between the economic development and that person's individual rights, and that's where they use eminent domain. I just think it's a horrendous idea. The solution is always the same. When you have a problem with your neighbor, when you have a problem with the city, the problem is actually two people talking like people. and so coming to a problem, because an edict coming from someone else that we're just going to take your property, all that does is leave everyone bitter, not just the person that lost the property, but everyone that's around them, because they know they're next. If instead an actual solution is reached, those last. Whatever it is long term, if I can convince you to buy into whatever the program ultimately looks like, I get what we need as a city, you get what you need as a resident, everybody's happy, and then everyone feels like they have a say in what happened, instead of someone just coming along and saying, you don't own this anymore.
How do you feel about using eminent domain to take private property for residential or commercial development?
I think if you got to the point where you're talking eminent domain, your leadership is absolutely critical. When we're starting to talk about projects like this, you're needing to purchase land, maybe get a group of neighbors to sell land to a developer. They should be brought into those projects in the very early stages. It shouldn't be something they see on a website where it creates this fear. They should be part of the first people you're talking about. Get them involved, get them to buy into the project, and the chances are, if they're comfortable with it, they've had their input, their concerns have been addressed, and they're on board with the project, there's not going to be a need for eminent domain. They're going to understand the need for it, they're going to welcome it, and essentially they're a part of it, so it's not going to be an issue. As far as eminent domain, I'm against it. I don't believe, unless it's absolutely something for life, safety type services, I don't believe we should be talking eminent domain for anything as far as building residential.
Well, for a change, I'll be short. We have never used eminent domain. We have never even discussed eminent domain in my administration. It is contrary to who we are as a community, and you will not see eminent domain in my administration. Thank you.
Okay, it's cold. Yeah. Some people walked in at halftime, so I didn't make up the questions, right? Everything came from the community. You guys are awesome. You guys are awesome. That's all I got. The sewer and water Powell over there, and I'm leaving before that happens. I didn't get coffee yet. I'll buy you coffee. Everyone's in the tavern. I'm having brew some.
See ya. Take care. Absolutely. I'm right around the corner.
Yeah, if you don't mind grabbing a chair, if you are able. I freeze my ass off and I have beer. Don't get one.
Are they going to force it? Are they going to force it?
You can lay that right there. Here? It's not